All right, so move on to the next section, which is developing a concise style. A little bit different than what we've been looking at. So we're going to focus on avoiding deadwood constructions. I'll explain that to you in a moment. Avoiding redundancy. Carefully considering your passive verbs. I want to talk a little bit about that. And of course, always um, uh, avoiding pretentiousness. And again, I'll talk a lot about that as well. Okay, deadwood constructions are something I come across a lot in student writing, and it is something to avoid. It's just wasted space, basically. So, what a deadwood construction is again any kind of sentence structure that is unnecessary, that adds words. I noticed that incoming freshmen, because they have spent so long uh, in high school writing to reach a word count, enjoy writing sentences for the sake of words. That is not what's going to be successful for you at college or really at any other level of life when it comes to writing. So let's take a look and see what we can do to resolve this issue. Okay, so here's one. The reason the starving novelist drove 50 miles to a new restaurant was because it was serving his favorite chicken dish, Pullet Surprise. Okay, this I see a lot, and I see it also in professional writing, and I hate it. The reason was because that's redundant. Okay, it's ungrammatical, it's wordy, and if you have a reason, you don't need a reason because the reason is the cause. So, how do you fix it? The starving novelist drove 50 miles to a new restaurant because it was serving his favorite chicken dish, Pullet Surprise. Okay, so you see there, it cuts away unnecessary words, and it's simply more correct. The land settlement was an example where my client, Ms. Patty O. Furniture, I did not make this sentence up, did not receive fair treatment. Okay, an example where we don't need to know that. If you're trying to tell us that she was not treated fairly in the settlement, simply state that, and that's what the revised version indicates. The land settlement was unfair to my client, Mrs. Patty O. Furniture. Simple as that. Another bugaboo that I can't stand in student writing is the fact that. Okay, you don't need the fact that in any of your sentences. Because of the fact that his surfboard business failed after only a month, my brother decided to leave Minnesota. You don't need that. All you need to do is say because. It's a cause-effect relationship. Because his surfboard business failed after only a month, my brother decided to leave Minnesota. Notice it does not bury the idea. And when you are writing words just for the sake of words, you are producing sentences that obscure what you're trying to communicate. That's why you need to make sure that you identify exactly what it is you need to say. You have to say everything you need to say, but you don't want to say any more than that. Here are some other examples of deadwood constructions that are commonly used by a variety of writers that you want to avoid in your own writing, and the solutions, regardless of the fact that, can be handled simply with although, due to the fact that can be handled with because. The reason is that needs to just be stricken from any kind of writing. As to whether or not to either omit as to and or not, and whether will be fine. At this point in time can be handled simply with now or today. It is believed that, use a subject, right? It is believed that so and so blank. People believe that so and so. Okay. Concerning the matter of, use about. By means of, use by. That's all you need there. These are the kinds of blank, that, whatever. Again, use these and a specific noun, And finally, on account of, again, can be handled with because. These simply add words that don't do anything, and this is what you're trying to avoid when you are developing as writers. Along the same lines, you have these that I'm calling and the book calls fillers. They don't need to be used. They just add wordiness to your sentences. Each candidate will be evaluated on an individual basis. Well, all you need to say is each candidate will be evaluated individually. Television does not portray violence in a realistic fashion. Again, a simple adverb. Television does not portray violence realistically. And then finally, the New York blackout produced a crisis-type situation? No, it produced a crisis. That's what you need to say, not a crisis-type situation. All right, and here's some more deadwood constructions. In this case, they are what I term space wasters. Specifically, there are and it is. There's no reason to be using these words or these phrases in a sentence when you can simply state what you mean. For example, there are 10 dental students on Fulbright scholarships attending this university. Well, you don't need to say there are. All you need to do is say 10 dental students on Fulbright scholarships attend this university. The same thing with it is. It is true that the county fair still offers many fun contests, including the ever-popular map fold-off. Well, you don't need it is true. All you need to do is to say it offers these things. The county fair still offers many fun contests, including the ever-popular map fold-off. Again, you're not going to be able to fix all of this in time for your revisions, but this is what you want to be keeping in mind as you develop as writers. And here are more space wasters. In this case, the who and which clauses. These are situations where you can simply use an adjective to communicate what you're trying to tell the reader. So, the getaway car, which was stolen, turned the corner. Well, why not just say, the stolen getaway car turned the corner? Or, the chef, who was depressed, ordered his noisy lobsters to settle down. Again, simply use the word depressed. The depressed chef ordered his noisy lobsters to settle down. Again, this is a way of trimming back your writing. You don't want to be writing words that don't communicate or that don't add to what you're trying to say. You want to have your sentences be active and lean. The next type of order that we'll deal with is space order or spatial order, which is organized according to spatial direction and is used for physical descriptions. So we have an example here. In this case, there are not really uses of transitional expressions. Rather, the way in which the details of the description of Big Dave, which is our subject, are presented clearly indicate the order, so that transitional expressions are not necessarily needed in this situation. So, Big Dave is our subject, was a pure cowboy is the controlling idea. So everything that we find out about Big Dave has to conform to the idea that he is a pure cowboy. So all of the descriptive details need to establish unity, need to describe him as a cowboy. There are many other things perhaps to say about Big Dave, but that's what this paragraph wants to say. In addition to the unity, however, the coherence is essential, and in this case, we're moving from top to bottom. Now, in spatial order, when you're describing something, you don't just have to move from top to bottom. You could move from bottom to top. You could move from left to right, right to left. You could move from outside to inside or inside to outside. It really doesn't matter so long as where you begin and where you end are clearly in opposition. In other words, if you begin at the top, you have to end at the bottom, and you have to go step by step in that direction. And that's what this writer does. So, he wore a black felt hat so big that it kept his face in perpetual shade. Well, that's his head, so we know we're beginning with the top. Around his neck was knotted a red bandana stained with sweat from long hot days in the saddle. The neck is down from the head. An oversized blue denim shirt hung from his shoulders, that's down from the neck, to give him plenty of arm freedom, right? That's down from the shoulders. And his faded jeans were held up by a broad leather belt with a huge belt buckle featuring a snorting bronc in full buck, which covers the waist with the belt and the legs with the jeans. His boots, old and dirt-covered, kicked up little dust storms as he sauntered across the corral. And of course his boots are on his feet, and so we have ended at the bottom of Big Dave. So I think that's pretty evident. If you are going to describe something, and you may need to either in this class at some future date or in terms of another class, this is the way you would go about describing something physically, how it appears to the eye. Okay, this is the end of our space wasters. This is the last of the Deadwood constructions. In this case, the use of and infinitive phrases, such as to make. So let's take a look at some needlessly wordy sentences and how you can fix them simply by removing removing the words that don't need to be there. At the time of registration, students are required to make payments of their library fees. Why don't you just say this? At registration, students must pay their library fees. It sounds better, it's more direct, every single word is working. The other one, far too wordy. Same thing with the second example. The producer fired the mother of the director of the movie. It sounds bad, and it can be easily rectified. The producer fired the director's mother. That's all. Okay. So if you find that you're stringing the ofs, right? These prepositional phrases probably means that you're not really cutting to the meat of the sentence. Okay. You also want to avoid in your sentences redundancy. And this is another thing that I see a great deal in freshman composition papers. In this day and age, people expect to live at least 70 years. Day and age are the same idea. Why not just say today? Today, people expect to live at least 70 years. That's perfectly fine. If you think that it sounds better to say in this day and age, believe me, it doesn't. If you think you're unique in using that, you're not. Okay, I'm just telling you this from personal experience. He repeated the winning bingo number over again. If you repeat, you are saying it over again. There is no reason to say repeated and over again. He simply repeated the winning bingo number. The group consensus of opinion was that the pizza crust tasted like cardboard. Consensus does mean collective opinion, so it is unnecessary to add group or repeat opinion. You just need to say the consensus was that the pizza crust tasted like cardboard. And then finally, she thought that his hot lava necklaces were really very unique. Things can't be really very unique. They are either unique or they're not unique. And I don't even like the word unique because what? Everything's unique, basically. So, because unique means being the only one of its kind, the quality described by unique cannot vary in degree. Avoid adding modifiers such as very, most, or somewhat to the word unique. They either are unique or they're not unique. Okay. Now then, other common redundancies you can see here. To revert back, it's just revert. Just that's all it means. Reflected back is reflected. Retreated back, retreated. Fell down. If you fall, you can only fall down. Climb up, you can only climb up. A true fact is always going to be a true fact. So you don't need to say a true fact. There's no such thing as a false fact. Large in size, that is already implied with the word large. Joined up, you don't need to say up, you just need to say joined. New innovation. An innovation is de facto new. Red in color. Well, can it be red in something else? No, it is a color you don't need to use in color. Burned up or burned down, burned. That's all you need to say. A pair of twins or two twins. You don't need to say a pair. You don't need to say two. Twins are always going to be two. Resulting effect, right? uh, that's the effect is always the result of something. Resulting is not necessary. Final outcome, an outcome is final, so there's no reason to say that. At this point in time, just use now, really. And then 8 p.m. at night. PM communicates that it's at night. So these are just the small things you can do to clean up your writing. And now we come to something that I really don't like a lot at all, and that is passive verbs. There are certain situations in which using a passive verb is acceptable. But generally speaking, what you want is your verb to be active, and you want the subject to be the actor of the action. So, when you use passive voice, it really weakens your writing and it adds completely unnecessary words. I've added these arrows here. That's not in the book. Because what you want your sentence to do is to move from the beginning to the end. Okay, you want the action to be distributed in that direction. When you use passive voice, you are altering or reversing the action. So in the example we have here, the passive voice, the wedding date was announced by the young couple. Well, who did the announcing? Well, it was the couple. Why then are they not the subject of the sentence? You have an intransitive action, meaning that there is no object of the action, and then you have the wedding date. So the sentence really moves from the person announcing or the people announcing, the young couple, to the action, the announcement, to what is being announced, the wedding date. The action goes against the structure of the sentence. What you should write is the young couple announced their wedding date. In that case, the subject is the actor. The verb is an action verb, that it is transitive, there is a subject for it, and then the wedding date, it receives the action. So that's what you want to try to do. Write in active voice as much as possible. Another thing to avoid is pretentiousness. And how am I going to describe pretentiousness? I would say that probably the easiest way to do it is to say writing words because they sound like they mean something, as opposed to using words in order to communicate something. So we have an example here from an actual 1942 government memo announcing a blackout order. This is during World War II, of course. So here's what the original memo stated. Such preparations shall be made as will completely obscure all federal buildings and non-federal buildings occupied by the federal government during an air raid for any period of time from visibility by reason of internal or external illumination. Now, can you understand that? Not really. I have a hard time following it myself. What should they have written? Well, fortunately, President Roosevelt stepped in and revised it. Tell them that in buildings where they have to keep the work going, to put something across the windows. That's it. That's all you need to say. Again, remember, you're not trying to impress anybody with your vocabulary or your ability to string together words. Impressive writing is writing that communicates. It's straightforward, it's simple, it makes its point, and it moves on.